This is my analysis and reflection of the two interviews that I did as part of making up for not attending the 3-day training session. The first simulated scenario that I'm going to discuss involved my client presenting with relationship issues and wanting to obtain support and assistance with communicating with his partner. During the simulated scenario, I demonstrated attending behaviour by listening to the client, responding with appropriate verbal cues such as open body language. I leant forward slightly to show that I was interested in listening. I ensured that the client felt comfortable and safe in the environment. I used appropriate eye contact and the appropriate amount of silence. I read the client's body language to assess any discrepancies, new perspectives, and any outcomes or solutions that the client may be reaching. I believe I used these techniques and they were effective in providing a client-centered approach. I allowed the client to feel listened to and comfortable with opening up and discussing his concerns around the communication difficulties he was experiencing with his partner. I feel I was able to acknowledge him to identify strategies on his own. However, I feel I require more practice with this as I felt unsure how to proceed and went straight to suggesting possible assistance ideas. In order to obtain and build rapport, I engaged in small talk prior to the session commencing with asking him if he made it okay, if he wanted a drink, if he was comfortable, and even though counsellors are meant to discuss confidentiality, it creates an open relationship where they feel comfortable that there will be no surprises and everything's out on the table. So I engaged in providing closed and open-ended questioning to show I was listening and obtaining more information by providing him with an opportunity to openly reflect and express what he wanted to say in more than just a yes or no answer. I used the question, how about you tell me a bit about yourself and what led you here and how we can help you today, in order to allow him to express who he was, his situation, and what he wanted out of our sessions. I used closed-ended questioning only to reiterate what I'd heard to ensure that I was on the right track and to demonstrate to him that I was listening actively. I believe the use of my open-ended questioning and closed-ended questioning were effective. He showed creativity in his answers and thoughtfully explored his situation. I also believe that I used closed-ended questioning as a means to obtain small certain bits of information that would aid me in knowing a bit more about him, such as so communication is a bit of an issue between you two. This led to him saying yes. I personally found it easier to ask open-ended questioning than it was to ask closed-ended questioning, only because I wasn't sure where to ask them. I think some more practice in that area would be good for me. With regards to the use of reflection, I am aware that it's important to focus on what the client is stating by reflecting and clarifying their verbal and non-verbal communication. This is to show that I'm considering the client as an equal who has the capacity to identify their own solutions to their issues or goals or things like that. In doing this, I believe I was effectively able to identify and differentiate between the client's story, between the client's emotional feelings and the content of what he was saying. I know this is important to allow him to see that I'm listening, to become more in touch with his emotional feelings and a better understanding of the content of what he was saying. It also encourages him to continue talking. I was also able to reiterate the client's feelings and content of his story correctly, which showed him that I was what he was saying was important to me, and I was listening attentively and actively. I demonstrated the use of minimal encouragements, such as nodding my head and saying at the correct times to encourage him to continue and show I was listening. I used paraphrasing by repeating what he had said in my own words to show I understood. An example of that was when I said, from what I'm hearing you say is you feel concerned about taking a holiday and having a baby at the same time, and you're also a little concerned about your concerns not being heard by her. This led to him agreeing. This demonstrated that I was listening wholeheartedly, and I believe this was successful. The second simulated scenario involved my client presenting with wanting assistance to quit smoking. During this, again, I demonstrated attending behaviour and active listening by appropriate verbal cues to show I was following his story, open body language, leaning forward to show I was interested in what he was saying, appropriate eye contact, and use of silence. I ensured the environment was friendly and safe for him. I found this scenario a little more easier and comfortable to discuss with him, possibly because of the content of what we were talking about wasn't as heavy. I feel I was able to encourage him to identify some strategies on his own with regards to quitting smoking. He was able to identify that he had cut back and he had gone to the doctor to seek out assistance there. I used, again, open-ended questions such as, how about you tell me a bit about yourself and what led you here? That encouraged him to tell me a bit about himself and what he expected from our sessions. I used closed-ended questioning such as, and that triggers you to want to have a smoke, and he reiterated yes. I believe the use of my open-ended questioning was effective as he got quite creative in his answers and thoughtfully explored his situation. I believe the use of my closed-ended questions were also effective. Again, a little more practice in that would have been good. With reflection, I focused on what he was saying and reflected that by clarifying his verbal and non-verbal cues. I believe I was effective by identifying his emotions and the content of the story to show that not only that I was listening, but to give him a chance to become more in touch with his emotions and understanding the content of his own story, and providing him with a means to possibly come to a solution on his own. I demonstrated, again, the use of minimal encouragers, such as nodding my head and saying at the appropriate times to encourage him to keep talking and show him I was listening. I paraphrased, such as when I said, so routine financial triggers and your mates are all part of why you're having trouble quitting smoking. He reiterated that I was correct in that. I acknowledged that towards the end of that scenario, I felt I struggled with finding things to continue the line of questioning and the counselling process, and encouraging him to continue talking. I feel that asking the client if he had any other issues that he wanted to identify around the struggles of quitting possibly could have made him feel the issues he had already expressed were not heard or considered important, so I need some more work on that. Overall, I feel that I was confident in demonstrating the ability to draw on micro skills during those sessions.